For anyone who has followed the stories coming out of Mexico, one thing is clear. Becoming entangled with the cartels is almost like signing away your life, and we have seen many gruesome videos of how they show no mercy to anyone who stands in their way.
Next time you decide to give the finger, think about it very carefully, because it's not easy being here, and you can never go back. With these people, you don't play around. The people of El Chapo are not how they say they are.
However, a particular video surfaced, showing the extreme ruthlessness of a father and son at the hands of bloodthirsty gangsters. In this video, we will explore the fate of this father and son in Guerrero, and why it's actually an important story that exposes several truths about the Mexican criminal underworld. In the summer of 2018, a disturbing video surfaced on the internet, revealing a deeply horrifying and unsettling scene that was allegedly filmed in the hills of a municipality in La Union, near the border of Costa Grande and Tierra Caliente. This video documents the torture and potential murder of a mother and son by the members of a Mexican cartel group. This video is also known as No Mercy in Mexico, as this father and son faced an unimaginable fate at the hands of their captors. The footage is divided into 3 parts, each about 3 minutes long, showing different stages of their terrifying ordeal. At the beginning of the video, both men were sitting on the ground, their hands tied tightly and their mouths gagged. Their captors began questioning them, and then one of the captors began to beat the older man with what appeared to be a large wooden stick. The violence inflicted on him was beyond comprehension. Tragically, things took an even darker turn when the father's head was decapitated in front of his son. The most heartbreaking moment in the video was the son's reaction to witnessing his father's horrific death. The son's muffled cries behind the gag captured the emotional devastation in a way that words cannot describe. What is a little bit shocking is the fact that the father did not resist or struggle with his captors while he was being beheaded. It looked as if he had resigned himself to his fate, possibly due to the trauma from earlier beatings or being paralyzed by the brutality of the situation. What followed was perhaps even more agonizing. The young man himself was subjected to drawn-out mistreatment. Instead of receiving a swift end, his captors inflicted prolonged cruelty, leaving him in visible shock and distress. Throughout this painful and gruesome act, the son remained conscious, drifting in and out of shock. The pain and suffering he underwent are beyond comprehension, as his captors repeatedly hacked flesh away from his torso to his abdominal area, exposing his internal organs to the camera. The third part of the video showed the aftermath of the flaying, revealing the lifeless bodies of the father and son, completely mutilated. Their captors proudly displayed their heads and held them up like trophies. According to different sources on the internet, the captors behind the Guerrero Flaying video are members of the Las Viagras cartel. This video was posted on the internet to serve as a warning to their enemies. Las Viagras gained notoriety for their extreme brutality and cruelty towards rivals and anyone who opposed them. They have committed heinous acts, including massacres, kidnappings, extortion, and extreme torture, demonstrating their viciousness. The Las Viagras are based in Michoacán, Mexico, and they emerged in December 2014 when the Sierra Santana brothers, once part of the Grupos de Autodefensa Comunitaria, a self-defense force fighting the Knights Templar cartel in Michoacán's Tierra Caliente region, decided to establish their group. The name Las Viagras originated from a joke involving one of the younger brothers, his excessive use of hair gel, and his spiky hairstyle. Their criminal activities gained momentum when they attempted to disarm and dismantle the self-defense groups in December 2014, eventually taking over the municipal presidency of Apatzingan. However, on the 6th of January 2015, they encountered strong resistance from the federal police, leading to 10 civilian deaths and 21 wounded. Over time, Los Viagras became increasingly involved in the drug trade, particularly in methamphetamine production and transportation. This expansion led to clashes with the powerful Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG, known as the most powerful and ruthless cartel in Mexico. By forming alliances with other criminal factions like the Cartel Independiente de Acapulco and the Beltran-Leyva cartel, they extended their influence to other states such as Guerrero, Jalisco, and the state of Mexico. The dangerous criminal group is said to be led by the infamous Sierra Santana brothers, Nicolas Sierra Santana, also known as El Gordo, and Rodolfo Sierra Santana, along with their brothers, including the now deceased Jose Carlos, known as La Sopa, and Gabino. Los Viagras are engaged in a fierce territorial conflict with CJNG over control of Michoacán and other areas in Tierra Caliente and the state of Mexico. Despite the challenges posed by CJNG, Los Viagras have managed to hold their ground, making them one of Mexico's most formidable and hazardous criminal organizations. 5 years later, Guerrero Flaying's video is still shrouded in mystery and speculation. The identities of the victims and perpetrators involved in this gruesome crime are still unknown, and no official investigations or legal actions have been taken to address this heinous act. Surprisingly, the Mexican authorities have remained silent on the matter, which has further made people antsy about the whole situation. Although this video is not easily accessible on the internet, a few determined people have taken it upon themselves to dig deeper and attempt to uncover its secrets. Several theories and rumors are circulating about the victims and perpetrators involved, none of which have been confirmed or verified. One of the theories is that the father and son in the video were part of the Guerrero Unidos. In the southern region of Mexico, particularly in Guerrero, there exists a powerful criminal organization known as Guerrero Unidos. This group is involved in drug trafficking, corruption, extortion, kidnapping, and brutal murders. One of the most well-known incidents involving them was the disappearance of 43 students from Ayotzinapa College in Iguala, Guerrero, in 2014. The roots of Guerrero Unidos can be traced back to 2010, when two factions from La Familia Michoacana joined forces with various cartels, forming this menacing alliance. It emerged as the remnants of the once powerful Beltran Leyva organization decided to unite after facing significant setbacks. The Beltran Leyva organization lost power after the death of its leader, Arturo Beltran Leyva, in 2009, and the arrest of his trusted and loyal confidant, Edgar Valdez Villarreal, also known as La Barbie, in 2010. Some Beltran Leyva organization factions sought alliances with other cartels like the Juarez Cartel, Los Zetas, and the Tijuana Cartel, while others formed new groups like the Cita and La Baradora. Out of this situation, Guerrero Unidos was born. Taking advantage of the weakened Beltran Leyva organization and the lack of effective local authorities, Guerrero Unidos gained control of several municipalities in Guerrero, with Iguala being a major stronghold. The group managed to infiltrate positions of power, forming connections with influential figures like Mayor Jose Luis Abarca and his wife Maria de los Angeles, who were both members of the Institutional Revolutionary Party. They even had connections within the ranks of the police and military, using corruption and intimidation to gain information and protection. Guerrero Unidos was also known for its involvement in political corruption, colluding with local authorities to serve their malicious interests. A tragic example was the disappearance of 43 students from Ayotzinapa College on the 26th of September 2014. These students were heading to support a protest in Mexico City to commemorate the 46th anniversary of the Tlatelolco massacre, when the municipal police in Iguala stopped them and allegedly handed them over to members of Guerrero Unidos. At the request of the mayor, a coalition of forces from the Iguala Municipal Police, Federal Ministerial Police, Mexican Federal Police, Guerrero State Police, and various members of Sedena intercepted the students' bus and opened fire, resulting in the deaths of 6 students. According to a witness, some of the students were interrogated and tortured at a military base before being killed and incinerated by the cartel. This inhumane incident sparked protests and outrage both within Mexico and internationally, exposing the deep connections between the criminal organization, the mayor of Iguala, Jose Luis Abarca, and other complicit officials. In southern Mexico, Guerrero Unidos is engaged in fierce conflicts with rival cartels, all vying for control over drug routes and territories, not only in Guerrero but also in other states. The enemies they face include the Gulf Cartel, the the Knights Templar Cartel, the Popular Revolutionary Army, the Sinaloa Cartel, Los Rojos, and La Nueva Familia Michoacana. One notable group resisting the expansion of the CJNG in Guerrero is Los Viagras. Originally from Michoacan, Los Viagras started as a self-defense group fighting against the Knights Templar Cartel. However, over time they became involved in drug trafficking and other criminal activities. Los Viagras have joined forces with La Nueva Familia Michoacana, another faction opposed to both the CJNG and Los Caballeros Templarios. Together they form Carteles Unidos, a coalition determined to halt the CJNG's progress in Michoacán and Guerrero. Carteles Unidos, also known as La Resistencia, was initially formed by the Sinaloa Cartel, the Gulf Cartel, La Familia Michoacana, and the Knights Templar Cartel in 2010. Their objective was to drive the Los Zetas cartel out of Michoacán and Jalisco. However, as the Knights Templar cartel collapsed and La Familia Michoacana splintered, Carteles Unidos shifted its focus towards countering the CJNG. An intense confrontation between these rival factions occurred in April 2020 when a convoy of CJNG gunmen attacked the community of La Huerta, the municipality of Aguila, which was under the control of Los Viagras. In April 2020, CJNG gunmen stormed the town, firing at residents and members of Los Viagras, who had been in control since 2019. The encounter turned into a fierce and prolonged gun battle, lasting for hours and resulting in at least 18 deaths from the rival groups. The army personnel who traveled to La Huerta after the report of heavy shootings found an organized crime camp and in it 12 dead men who would be members of Los Viagras, Carteles Unidos. The victims were executed, apparently being caught while they slept, by the CJNG. At the bottom of a nearby ravine, 6 other bodies were found, which were sprayed with gasoline and set on fire, due to the difficult terrain. Until the afternoon, the rescue work of those bodies continued. In addition, 16 heavy-caliber weapons were seized at the site, including a 50mm Barrett rifle, as well as magazines labeled with the legends FM from Familia Michoacana, members of Carteles Unidos, and Viagras. Likewise, 2 trucks with artisan armor, called Monsters, were seized. According to inhabitants of the region, a couple of days ago, after holding shootings in El Aguaje and El Limoncito, Aguililla, members of Los Viagras, Carteles Unidos displaced the Jalisco cartel. After taking control of those places, Los Viagras, Carteles Unidos looted homes and businesses, and then went to La Huerta to rest, where they were ambushed. One of the main rivals of the Guerrero Unidos is the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG, one of the most powerful and violent groups in Mexico. The CJNG is rapidly expanding its influence in Guerrero and other states, leading to intense clashes with Guerrero Unidos and other rival cartels as they compete for control of the lucrative heroin market. Credible sources report that the CJNG has been taking over opium poppy fields, heroin labs, and smuggling routes in Guerrero and beyond, which fuels deadly confrontations with Guerrero Unidos and other factions. This cartel is known for its dominance and brutality, with a strong presence in at least 28 out of the 32 states in Mexico. The violent conflicts between these two powerful cartels have had severe consequences for innocent people in Guerrero and neighboring states. The region located between Mexico City and the Pacific coast has faced widespread insecurity, human rights violations, displacement, and deepening poverty. Sadly, Guerrero has a troubled history of enduring violence and misrule, and it now serves as the epicenter of organized crime in Mexico, with more competing groups vying for control than any other region. In response to the dangerous situation, many communities in Guerrero have formed self-defense forces or community police to protect themselves from the cartels. However, these groups encounter challenges like limited resources, a lack of legal recognition, inadequate training, coordination issues. Guerrero Unidos originated from former members of the Beltran Leyva organization affiliated with La Barbie, including Angel Casarubias Salgado, also known as El Mochomo, Cedronio Casarubias Salgado, also known as El Chino, and Mario Casarubias Salgado. The leader, Esther Yadira Huitron Vasquez, who was also known as La Jefa, took control after her husband's arrest in 2015 and was arrested in November 2021 in Huaxtepec, Morelos. She was one of Mexico's most wanted criminals, with a reward of 1.5 million pesos, or $75,000, offered for her capture. Interestingly, she is the sister-in-law of Ángel Casarubias Salgado, El Mochomo, one of the founders of Guerrero Unidos, currently in prison. Another theory that emerged from the video is that the father and son were referred to as chapulín, the Spanish word for grasshopper. Chapulín is also a Mexican slang word that has other meanings. It can describe people who quickly move from one place, job, or political party to another. It can also be used to label someone as unfaithful, disloyal, or opportunistic. The fact that the father and son were called chapulíns points out that they were once associated with the Los Viagras cartel or betrayed them in some terrible way. In the Mexican cartel's world, betrayal or desertion is seen as a grave offense because it undermines their authority, loyalty, and reputation. These cartels follow strict codes of conduct, and those who break them face severe punishments. If you've ever watched a movie about Mexico's drug wars, you might have encountered a mix of glorified truth and exaggerated fiction, except for one grim reality: beheadings. These horrifying acts continue to be used as a cruel method for dealing with informants and traitors. Betrayal or desertion takes on various forms within the world of cartels, including actions such as changing loyalties, revealing sensitive information, stealing money or drugs, cooperating with authorities, disobeying orders, or leaving the cartel to join another group. Regardless of the situation, cartels relentlessly pursue and punish those who betray or desert them, often resorting to death or torture. Sometimes, these brutal consequences are extended to include the betrayer's families or friends. The cartels use horrifying methods to emphasize their strictness on loyalty to members of the cartel, rival cartels, and even the outside world. For example, in 2011, a disturbing video circulated widely on the internet. Another nephew and uncle were beheaded by an unidentified cartel while working as halcones for the Sinaloa cartel. The sicarios concealed their identities with masks and used a chainsaw and a knife to carry out their brutal acts. The video showed Felix Gamez Garcia on the left and his uncle Barnabas Gamez Castro on the right, both caught amid this tragic event. According to the video, Felix and Barnabas faced accusations of being informants for the infamous Sinaloa cartel and assisting in drug trafficking into the United States under orders from the notorious El Chapo. Following his arrest on drug charges, Felix was deported back to Mexico. However, instead of severing ties with the Sinaloa cartel, he became even more deeply involved. They identified themselves as cousins and admitted to having worked as halcones, or hawks, meaning lookouts or spies for the cartel and drug smugglers. He started working for El Cholo, the leader of the Nueva Plaza cartel, and aligned himself with a faction of the Sinaloa cartel. But he must have known that betraying the cartel meant putting his life at risk. Barnabas Gamez Castro shared a heartbreaking detail, speaking about the meager wages the drug cartels paid them. These criminal organizations often exploited vulnerable individuals from impoverished backgrounds, forcing them into dangerous tasks that took a toll on their lives. Shockingly, Felix and Barnabas received a pitiful amount of only 300 pesos, which is about $21, as payment for their last job that they carried out for the Sinaloa cartel. For nearly 6 terrifying minutes, they were interrogated by sicarios, who is usually seen in gruesome videos of this kind, like the Guerrero Flaying video. These men have no remorse or iota of respect for human life. We don't know what criminal organization they were part of, but they were ready to cause chaos and viciously shed blood. The victims endured brutal interrogation, beaten and hopeless, answering questions in resignation, seemingly accepting their fate. Some believe drugs in their system may have affected their demeanor during the ordeal. Before Barnabas was decapitated, he left a message for those who want to get into the dark side of the drug cartels.
Think next time you decide to give the finger. Think about it very carefully, because it's not easy being here, and you can never go back. With these people, you don't play around. The people of El Chapo are not how they say they are.
When the time of execution came, both men showed no signs of resistance. They appeared to have already resigned themselves to death. This was very similar to how the father and son in the Guerrero Flaying murder resigned themselves to death without struggling. Even the sound of the chainsaw did not seem to affect them. The man in military attire, wielding the chainsaw, looked merciless. Barnabas Gamez Castro met a swift end to his life as the sicario tore his head apart from his body with a chainsaw. For anybody familiar with how brutal and merciless the cartel is, you can say that Barnabas Gamez Castro got lucky to have been spared from excruciating pain and torture before he died. His nephew, Felix Gamez Garcia, sat there unflinching, bathed in the blood gushing out of the severed neck of his uncle. Little did he know that what the sicarios had in store for him was a fate worse than getting beheaded with a chainsaw. The sicarios had a far more gruesome weapon in mind, a hunting knife. He experienced an even more horrifying fate due to his deeper involvement with drug dealers. A masked individual heartlessly sawed through his neck with a small hunting knife, causing unimaginable pain. Felix's feeble whimpers were drowned out by the ruthless sicarios, and his agony ended when the sicario severed his spinal cord with the hunting knife. The brutality didn't end there. They placed Felix's severed head on his torso, as if they were displaying a trophy. Moving on, another person who betrayed the Mexican cartel and met a dreadful end was a respected and prominent gangster. At the peak of his life, he was known as El Cholo, the respected and presumed head of the Nueva Plaza Cartel, a criminal organization based in Guadalajara, Mexico. But at the end of his life, he was simply Carlos Enrique Sanchez, a body left on a park bench in downtown Tlaquepaque, the Mexican state of Jalisco, wrapped in a plastic tarp as another bloody casualty in the Mexican cartel wars. Now, if you are familiar with the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, also known as the CJNG, you know that they are not people that, in their right mind, would willingly cross paths with or betray. But El Cholo did the unthinkable. He didn't just betray some low-level members of the cartel, he turned his back on the boss himself, the infamous El Mencho. Instead of seeking approval, he started ordering hits without El Mencho's consent, which angered the boss, and this act of rebellion angered the cartel boss. A loyal member named Marcos Hernandez exposed El Cholo's secret actions to El Mencho, and this revelation further fueled the conflict. Instead of trying to make amends, El Cholo chose the path of confrontation. He left the CJNG and allegedly orchestrated the assassination of Marcos Hernandez, which led to a fierce war between his newly formed Nueva Plaza cartel and the CJNG. Despite being rivals, the Sinaloa cartel supported the Nueva Plaza cartel financially, adding fuel to the fire in the battle for control over Mexico's western states. Ultimately, El Cholo's alliance with the Sinaloa cartel proved to be his undoing. In a surprising turn of events, a video emerged on social media, purportedly showing El Cholo making bold claims. Unfortunately, this video was one of his last acts before meeting his tragic end. His lifeless body was found on a park bench in downtown Tlaquepaque, Jalisco, wrapped in a plastic tarp, becoming another victim in the ongoing Mexican cartel wars. With a horrific inscription attached to his torso with 2 knives. The autopsy report that followed showed a horrifying account of torture inflicted on El Cholo while he was still alive. Surprisingly, the Nueva Plaza cartel and the Sinaloa cartel did not retaliate against the CJNG after El Cholo's death. This unexpected calm in the city surprised the Mexican security analysts. However, beneath the surface of this apparent calm, there was a chilling message from El Mencho, the CJNG's leader. Leaving El Cholo's body in broad daylight was seen as a deliberate tactic to intimidate their enemies, warning CJNG members that any rebellion or defection would be met with a similarly brutal fate. There is a theory that the father in the video was a police officer, and that he betrayed them by leaking information about Los Viagras. This theory is based on some clues in the video, such as the father's haircut, his clothing, and his demeanor. One of the biggest cartels in Mexico, which also has a presence in Michoacán, is the CJNG, led by Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, who is popularly known as El Mencho. The CJNG is known for having the police on its payroll and for using them to protect its interests and attack its enemies. The CJNG often bribes, threatens, or kills police officers who do not cooperate with them or who try to stop them. The police officers were supposed to turn a blind eye to the cartel's actions, offer intelligence, and even execute assassinations on their behalf. According to a former state government official, a captured member of the CJNG claimed that El Mencho has corrupted over half of Jalisco's municipal police force through bribery. The extent of the CJNG's infiltration varied depending on the roles of individual police officers. The cartel offered monthly payments ranging from 1,000 pesos to 50,000 pesos or even more, effectively turning the police into their silent allies. In some areas of Mexico, police officers earn as little as $500 a month, making them susceptible to being tempted by money. A phone call recording got leaked to Mexican media outlets in September 2016, where El Mencho exerted his power and dominance on the Mexican police to get them to act accordingly.
Delta 1.
Hey, ¿quién habla?
Mira bien, hijo de tu puta madre. Soy Mencho, güey. Relaja tu puta gente a la verga. Soy Mencho, güey. Relaja tus putas partidas, si no te voy a partir tu madre, tía, toda tu bola de perros. Te tengo identificado 30 güeyes.
This video is perfect evidence of how the CJNG controls the police. This one, where El Mencho himself talks to a Delta 1 cop who had arrested some of his men.
Hasta tus putos perros te voy a matar si no te relajas, güey. ¿Cómo ves?
Ya está, señor, ahorita los bajo.
Oh, no cuelgues, hijo de la verga. Te tengo ubicado en Chacala, güey.
No le estoy colgando, le estoy diciendo, ahorita los bajo.
Póngase bien las pilas, güey. ¿Qué se le cuesta ser amigo, cabrón? ¿Uno no se mete con ustedes para que se pasen de verga?
No, señor, ahorita yo se las bajo.
You can hear from the cop's voice that he is intimidated and scared out of his mind and reaffirms his allegiance to the CJNG.
Mire, revíremeles a todos los hijos de su puta madre porque todos agarran dinero y son buenos de puercos.
Sí, es lo que me están diciendo.
¿Se me ponen a tiro o tú eres el primero que vas a marchar por ellos, León?
No, señor.
¿Vale?
No, señor, no se trata de eso.
Váyanse a la verga porque aquí los vergazos están al 220, ya se la sabe. Y miedo no hay.
No, señor, no se trata de eso. Ahorita yo lo tengo.
Entonces, si quieren amistad, aquí va a tener un amigazo, cabrón. Si no, a chingar a su madre a la verga.
No, yo sé.
The video ended with the police officer referring to El Mencho as boss, showing how deep-rooted corruption and the Mexican drug cartels have eaten into Mexican law enforcement agencies. On the other hand, if the father in the Guerrero Flaying video was indeed a cop who worked for El Mencho, then revenge would have been very swift and harsh on Los Viagras. The CJNG does not tolerate any betrayal or desertion from their associates, and they often punish them with death or torture, sometimes involving their families or friends if they deem it fit. What they did to the members of the Los Viagras who mocked and laughed at them is a clear example of how they do not take anything lightly. In 2019, some Los Viagras members posted this video on social media where they openly laughed at El Mencho and the CJNG members, calling them losers and cowards. The CJNG did not take this insult lightly, and they responded by kidnapping the man who recorded the video. The CJNG in turn released a video of the Los Viagras member captured and bound in chains by his neck. The ordeal is just as heartbreaking as the Guerrero Flaying with the father and son. All these men are pawns in a grand game that rich cartel leaders are playing to exert dominance over the others. It's a tale as old as time, isn't it? When two elephants fight, the grass suffers. And that is it about the tragic fate of the father and son in Guerrero. If you want to see similar stories, click on one of the cards on the screen.